experience versus an objective experience, right? What are you feeling as a human being? And so when it comes to virtual reality, presence occurs when you start forgetting about that, the buttons on the controller, and you start forgetting about the technology, and you just get in that flow state where you're not in a head-mounted display anymore. You're in a different world, right? That's when you have high presence. Now it seems like a long definition. The actual, if you go to this website and look at their definition, it's like 20 pages long. So that's the short definition. Okay, so I kind of think about presence of breaking that down into, how can we break that down? Because that's what we're trying to achieve is presence, right? So that first off, sort of the base is sort of that illusion of being in what I call a stable spatial place, right? What I mean by that is if I look around, does the world appear stable? If it's not calibrated or there's latency, it's, not the best implementation, just because, there's limits to hardware. On the lower end, it's not quite stable. The world kind of wobbles around. So you don't really perceive that as... it doesn't quite seem real. Again, something really hard to explain, that you sort of have to experience something that's good versus something that's not as good, and you'll start kind of getting the difference, but you have to experience it for yourself. Then the illusion of physical interaction, right? Do I feel like I'm reaching out and grabbing this thing in my hand, right? That really adds to presence when you physically touch something that matches what you're visually seeing. Or even just moving your arms. Even if you're not interacting with physical objects, but I grab something virtually, that can add a lot to presence. Illusion of self-embodiment, that's when you kind of look down, you see your own body, and you see, social communication would be another form of presence, where you feel like, even though that guy might be on the other side of the country, in VR, you feel like you're communicating with him right there in the same space, even though he may not physically be there. That would be sort of an illusion. And then an illusion of plausibility is like the story kind of makes sense, right? The story in our mind and the story that's presented to us. And so, you hear the terms presence and immersion separated out, kind of intertwined, being the same thing. Kind of frustrates me, because why have two words if they mean the same thing, right? So I like going by the definition, sort of the classical definition of immersion, where immersion is the objective degree, not the perception of what you're seeing, but what are the pixels on the screen, right? Objectively, what is the technology that we're creating? That then are projected, those stimuli are projected onto our sensory receptors. And so examples of that are things like, I talked about the synchronization between the different sensory modalities, right? If what I'm seeing isn't in sync in position and in time with what I'm feeling, then it's going to be off, right? So that would be low on the matching end of immersion. Surroundness is, am I completely surrounded by information? Is that, can I turn around, or do I have do I have that 360-degree of tracking? And so head-mounted displays are really good at this. Other forms of reality, maybe not as much immersion. And then vividness. What I mean by that is things like the resolution or the lighting on the scene, the audio bit rate, right? How clear is that audio? Interactability. That is the response of virtual entities out in the environment. Do I feel like I have agency, that I have control of the world? And then the plot. Is the actual story consistent? Like, does it make logical sense? Not necessarily my perception. That would be the presence, illusion of plausibility. But is it just logically sort of makes sense from the objective point of view? Okay, let's see what time we have. Seizures. So actually, Derek was joking about this earlier about his light. I don't know those that were here, but he had the camera with the light that started blinking about, epileptic seizures, right? That can actually be a problem in VR, because if you have flashing light, kids get that from video games. But because we're more sensitive in some ways in the periphery of peripheral vision, when you get a wide field of view and you start flashing, then it might be worse than video games. So video games is something like 1 in 10,000 kids can have an danger of an epileptic seizure. Yes?
I did the Inagatu thing with LA County. Amazing experience with really a lot of quality, high production. No problem. I go home 3 hours later, after I drove on I started feeling like motion sickness after that. I've never experienced that before.
Yeah, it's weird how it's delayed for some people, and people feel it in different ways. And so a whole lot going on there. But so for the epileptic seizure, if you're having that flashing also out here,